You don't need to pick a social security number for one of those couple that's going to be on all of the accounts. There's just no reason to do that. Hi, this is Jeff Mersace, the Plain English Attorney, and welcome to the video. This video is going to be on the Married ABC Trust. What exactly does that ABC part mean? But I'm also going to add in questions about tax ID numbers, because that's a question that was sent in from a subscriber, and I want to address those questions that you have. I can come up with content ideas all day, but it's more important that I answer your questions when I put these videos out. So the Married ABC Trust, what exactly is it? Is there a difference between the Married A and the Married AB? I always tend to use the ABC just because it's going to take care of as much of an estate tax problem as possible. So let's go ahead and take a look here. So we have this ABC trust. It's some tax features, but when you have a married couple, and let me make sure I'm clarifying, U.S. citizen couple, there are provisions for permanent residents and others, but we're just going to stick with the citizenship portion today just because it's making and illustrating the point clearly. When you have two U.S. citizen married couple, and they have a married ABC trust while both of them are alive, any assets that are put into the trust are owned overall by this trust. There's no compartment, there's no A, there isn't any, well, this person owns this or that person owns that, unless you have a separate property agreement that goes along with it. But we're going to, for this example, we're going to just say no. It's a married couple. They own everything jointly. They put together this trust, and now we're putting assets into the trust. So it's controlled by both of them as the trustees. And the way that I draft it, and the way it's usually the default of the company that I kind of affiliate with, the estate planning source, you can use whichever social security number you want for either of that couple. So it's got to be written into the trust language that is an acceptable way to do it. You don't need a separate tax ID number at this point. And again, because it's drafted that way, you don't need to pick a social security number for one of those couple that's going to be on all of the accounts. There's just no reason to do that. Well, wait, how do we know which numbers? Look, it doesn't matter. At the end of the day, the financial institutions that are requesting what's the tax number, what social security number is, they really don't care as long as they have a correct place to send the 1099s and the K1s and the other things reporting the income. So what is very typical when I have couples, and maybe they have some of their own separate accounts, but then they have some joint accounts. At some point when they were putting together those joint accounts, they had to pick a social security number. Maybe one time it was one person, another time it was another. It doesn't matter. Just keep using whatever number you had associated with that. And again, because it's in the terms of the trust that you can use either, that's just the number you can use. So you can use either if the trust allows you to. That's the way we do it. All right, well, what happens when one of them passes on? Here's where we have things kick in for tax savings. Now, There are some ways you can have the trust where the money has to get divided between the A and the B, but the way we typically do it for my office, and this is definitely a kind of a 50-50 for what's out there, it all goes to this surviving trustor's revocable trust A. So they can then decide to put up to half over here into that decedent trustor's irrevocable trust B. This is where the tax savings comes in. I'm going to use some old numbers, and this is the example I give when I'm explaining this concept to my clients in either the estate summary meeting or the document review meeting when the question comes up. All right, let's use the old $1 million per person is exempt from estate taxes. And when you have married U.S. citizen couples, well, they can leave as much between each other as they want. They could leave $50 million. There aren't going to be any estate taxes when that first spouse passes on, as long as it's going to that spouse. Okay, great. Well, if you have, let's just say, $3 million. Well, no, if you have $2 million and I just leave everything to my spouse and we don't have this A and B and C compartment, well, then the surviving spouse passes on. They'd only have $1 million exempt from estate taxes. So it's $2 million. That would be somewhere in the neighborhood of $435,000, if I'm remembering correctly, that would have to go to pay federal estate taxes. Oh, well, gosh, we don't want that. Right. We want to be able to use both tax coupons for that couple. So whatever comes over to this decedent's irrevocable trust B, that's applying their tax credit. So it's maximizing the amount that's exempt from estate taxes by using both coupons. All right. Well, what happens if, say, it is $3 million, and so in the surviving trustor's revocable trust A, that's half of it, $1.5 million. Well, $1.5 million comes over to that trust B. Well, wait a minute. There's only $1 million exempt from estate taxes. That would mean $500,000 is exposed to estate taxes now. We don't want to do that. Yeah, that extra kind of shifts over to the C. So now here's what we have set up. $1.5 million in the surviving trustor's revocable trust A. $1 million in that decedent trustor's irrevocable trust B. And $500,000 in that decedent trustor's irrevocable trust C, or a Q-tip trust. So now, what would be subject to estate taxes when the surviving spouse passes on? It's everything in the A or the C. So now the tax job of the surviving spouse, if that's their main goal, is to avoid estate taxes, it's to spend down what they have to get below that $1 million level so that they're using their whole coupon, their tax coupon, but we don't end up with this excess. So if they can somehow spend and gift appropriately, prior to 3 years before passing on, and get that money out of their estate, then we're going to end up with no estate taxes. Now, what are the actual numbers? Well, this is being recorded in 2022. It's actually $12.06 million per person. I know from experience, if I led with that number, everybody's eyes would glaze over. Well, at least 3/4 of the people. Their eyes would glaze over. They wouldn't follow it. But look, this is here. Well, wait, I don't have anywhere near that amount. Why should I have all? Well, look. There's no guarantee that Congress isn't going to lower that estate tax threshold. There's no guarantee that the state you're living in can't impose a state level estate tax, where this mechanism still works equally as well. Again, if it's in correctly drafted trusts like the ones I use and with the estate planning source. So why not have that just in case? You know, the way I explain it, you don't take your spare tire out of the trunk of your car just because you don't expect to break down on the 5-mile trip to the grocery store. It's there if you need it. Oh, well, my car didn't break down. Great. You don't pull the tire out because you weren't expecting to break down. So look, maybe the rules change. Maybe you win several $1 million in a lottery or whatever. Look, it's already in there. It's taken care of. So now let's get to the tax ID question that was sent in by the subscriber. All right, the surviving trustor is revocable trust A, the decedent trustor is irrevocable trust B, the decedent trustor is irrevocable trust C, which is a Q-tip. The B and the C are now irrevocable pieces. So, again, the way I draft it, if the surviving spouse sees a reason to have things go over to the B trust, then that B trust is going to now need a separate taxpayer ID number. Not the Social Security number of the surviving spouse, not the Social Security number of the deceased spouse. It's going to need a separate tax ID number. Well, what about what's in that surviving trustor's revocable trust A? That needs to now have the Social Security number of that surviving spouse. Because again, think about it. It's all about tax reporting. So let's keep these numbers easy. And we're not going to talk about why, but let's just say that there's $4 million total. We're going to keep it very easy. $1 million in stock, $1 million in bank CDs, $1 million in a money market account, and a $1 million house. Well, okay, the surviving spouse decides, all right, so we're going to do $2 million and $2 million. I'm going to move the house and the money market over to the irrevocable trust B. All right. If the money market was in that surviving spouse's Social Security number, that needs to be switched over to the B trust's tax ID number. Oh, what if the CDs were all in the deceased spouse's name and under their, I'm sorry, not in the trust, but it was under their Social Security number? All right, well, now that it's in the surviving trustor's revocable trust A, you can't use the deceased spouse's Social Security number. It's going to get switched over to the survivor's Social Security number. All right, what about the trust C? All right, if you do have that situation where to save on taxes, either state or federal for estate taxes, or you delay it, all right, it's going to need its own tax ID number for the irrevocable trust C, because it is technically then a separate trust, a separate taxable entity. The assets in that C trust need to have that taxpayer ID number. So I'm hoping that wasn't too confusing. The thing is, for most of my clients, when we're setting up the trust, we don't even really have to address this too much beyond the theoretical. On the tax ID number, it becomes a lot easier if after the first spouse passes on, we're deciding what needs to be in the A or the B, or if we need to, the C. Laying out, here's the assets that we want in each of those trusts. Then we get the tax ID numbers, and it's just, okay, for all of these assets that are in the A trust, it's in your Social Security number. These that are in the B trust, here's that B trust tax ID number. That's how the accounts have to be listed, and the C trust, here are the accounts that and assets that are in there. It's under this other tax ID number. So that's the way we'll take a look at it. Okay, so I hope you found that information useful. Please help us out. Subscribe to the channel, like, follow whatever page, wherever you're seeing this. Go to the other platforms. The fact is, this isn't a monetized channel. So if you want to help spread this word so that people get this valuable information because it's needed, please, the best way to help us out is by subscribing, liking, and following different pages. As I always tell my clients, please stay safe, plan ahead, and enjoy life. And whatever you do, make it a great day.